frozen fjords of Norway, where snow fell like confetti and torpedoes danced beneath the waves, one British commander asked the impossible. How do you ambush 10 German destroyers with just 5 ships and a snowstorm for cover? Why did the sleepy port of Narvik become the stage for one of WW2's most daring naval battles? And what made Warburton-Lee charge into the blizzard, knowing he might never return? This is not just a battle, it's a cinematic clash of courage, chaos, and cold steel. Stay with us, because what unfolds next will leave you breathless, inspired, and wondering how history ever kept this story quiet. It was 1939, and Europe was about as peaceful as a cat in a bathtub. Germany, under Hitler's not-so-subtle leadership, had just barged into Poland like an uninvited guest at a dinner party. France and Britain, fed up with the Führer's antics, declared war. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, never one to miss a chaotic opportunity, decided to invade Finland, because apparently snow and silence weren't enough. Now enter Norway, beautiful, neutral, and blissfully uninterested in joining the global brawl. Norway's neutrality was like that one friend who refuses to pick sides in a group chat argument. Admirable? Yes. Convenient? Not so much. Here's the twist. Norway wasn't just a scenic escape with fjords and fish. It was the lifeline of iron ore, especially the port town of Narvik, which received iron ore. Operation Weserübung. The Blitzkrieg ballet begins. It was April 9, 1940. The Germans, ever the punctual party crashers, decided to waltz into Norway with airborne troops landing at Fornebu Airport near Oslo and Sola Air Station near Stavanger. They didn't knock. They didn't RSVP. They just parachuted in like overly enthusiastic skydivers at a wedding they weren't invited to. The Norwegians, bless their stoic hearts, were caught off guard. Their air defenses were about as ready as a snowman in July. Still, they scrambled fighters and tried to repel the invasion, but the Luftwaffe had brought more firepower than a Marvel movie finale. Now here's where the story gets spicy. As the German fleet glided into Oslo Fjord, under cover of darkness, they were met by Oscarsborg Fortress, a sleepy coastal defense installation that was about to become the star of the show. Enter Moses and Aaron, not biblical prophets, but two 48-year-old German-made guns that had been collecting rust and retirement checks. On this fateful morning, they roared to life like grumpy old men disturbed from their nap. Their target? The German heavy cruiser Blücher, leading the naval parade like a peacock in a minefield. The fortress fired. The torpedoes launched, and Blücher, unable to maneuver in the narrow fjord, was hit so hard it sank like a stone in a bathtub. The Germans were stunned. Their flagship was gone, their timetable was wrecked, and their pride? Somewhere at the bottom of the fjord. The unexpected resistance at Oscarsborg threw the Kriegsmarine into a frenzy. Unsure whether the damage came from coastal guns or hidden mines, they delayed the rest of the invasion. This gave the Norwegian royal family, cabinet, and parliament just enough time to pack their bags and flee like characters in a political thriller. Their escape was no joyride. They witnessed the Battle of Midskogen, the shelling of Elverum and Nybergsund, and probably cursed every pothole in Norway. But they made it out, eventually setting up a government in exile in Britain, sipping tea and plotting their return from Sweden, and shipped it out to Germany. And iron, my friend, is the lifeblood of tanks, guns, and all things warlike. Before the war, Germany got its iron from France's Lorraine region. But after the whole invade Poland fiasco, France wasn't exactly sending care packages, so Germany turned to Norway. The Allies, realizing this, had a collective, "oh no you don't" moment. Britain and France cooked up a plan so sneaky it could have been written by Agatha Christie. They'd ask Norway for permission to send troops through its territory to help Finland. But once inside, they'd pull a bait and switch. Seize the iron mines, take control of strategic ports, and give Germany a big, cold shoulder. Norway, however, wasn't born yesterday. They saw through the polite smiles and said, "Thanks, but no thanks." The Allies, not used to being ghosted, publicly threatened to take the mines by force. Norway clutched its pearls. Hitler, meanwhile, was watching like a hawk with a clipboard. After Commodore Bernard Warburton-Lee's daring assault on Narvik, the fjord was left littered with wreckage, the confusion, and the lingering scent of burnt diesel. The British had crippled Anton Schmidt, severely damaged Dieter von Roeder, and lightly bruised 2 other destroyers that were caught mid-refuel like sleepy cats at a milk bowl. But the Germans weren't just floating targets. Ground troops already stationed in Narvik opened fire from the shoreline. The British destroyers, lacking any landing force to storm the town, had to rely on their deck guns. It was like trying to swat mosquitoes with a broomstick. Loud, dramatic, but ultimately ineffective. As the firefight intensified, the British withdrew. But not before HMS Hostile, clearly not one for quiet exits, launched torpedoes at the merchant ships docked in the harbor. The result? A maritime massacre. 11 merchant ships destroyed, including 6 German, 1 British, 2 Swedish, and 2 Norwegian. Hostile didn't just leave a mark. She left a crater. Warburton-Lee had been told there were 6 German destroyers in Narvik. Turns out, someone forgot to carry the one. There were 10. As the British flotilla emerged from the port, they were ambushed by Wolfgang Zenker, Erich Kallner, and Erich Gysi, darting out of Herjang's Fjord like wolves from a snowy den. Then came the cavalry, Georg Thiele and Bernd von Arnim, charging in from Balangin Bay. The British were low on ammo, surrounded, and suddenly facing 5 fresh destroyers with full bellies and itchy trigger fingers. Warburton-Lee, ever the lion-hearted commander, refused to surrender. His flagship, HMS Hardy, took a pounding. With systems failing and the hull torn like a paper boat in a hurricane, the crew beached her to avoid sinking. Warburton-Lee was mortally wounded, but his defiance became legend. HMS Hunter was next. Struck by torpedoes, she sank within minutes. HMS Hotspur was hit too, limping away with her engines coughing like a smoker in a snowstorm. The remaining British ships, battered and bleeding, withdrew. The Germans, despite their tactical victory, were in no shape to chase. Their destroyers were damaged, low on fuel, and probably wondering if Narvik was cursed. Though the second flotilla was forced to retreat, they had disabled or destroyed 5 German destroyers, disrupted supply lines, and turned Narvik into a naval graveyard. Warburton-Lee was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest military honor, for his courage and leadership. Just days later, the Royal Navy returned with vengeance. Leading the charge was the HMS Warspite, a battleship so mighty she made destroyers look like dinghies. Accompanied by 9 destroyers, Warspite entered Narvik like a lioness into a den of hyenas. On April 13th, the Second Battle of Narvik erupted. Warspite's guns thundered across the fjord, sinking 3 German destroyers and damaging others. British aircraft from the battleship even scored hits. Yes, this was one of the first times aircraft launched from a battleship were used in combat. The Germans, now cornered, retreated into the mountains. Their naval presence in Narvik was shattered. The Allies had turned the tide, but the battle wasn't over. For 2 months, Norwegian, British, French, and Polish troops fought German mountain units and stranded Kriegsmarine sailors in the snowy terrain around Narvik. It was brutal, cold, and relentless. The Allies eventually recaptured Narvik on May 28th, marking the first major Allied victory of the war. But their triumph was short-lived. With the fall of France looming, the Allies evacuated Norway in June, leaving the Germans to reclaim the town. Narvik wasn't just a port, it was a symbol, a place where courage clashed with cunning, where destroyers danced in death spirals, and where a snowstorm became a cloak for heroism. Warburton-Lee's sacrifice, the Royal Navy's fury, and the multinational resistance etched Narvik into the annals of World War II as a battle of grit, guts, and glory. If you're captivated by the mysteries, legends, and raw truths we unveil, make sure to follow us, subscribe, and click that notification bell. That way, you'll be the first to know whenever we drop another mind-blowing story that shakes the past and stirs the soul. Your next obsession is just one click away. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next chapter.